Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the evening session of the City Council. I apologize for being late. I had some special guests, and we had to take a little time. The meeting is now called to order, and I'd like to ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
All council members are present.
Well, today we have a flag ceremony by the El Cajon Cub Scout Pack 395. They're the Arrow of Light Den, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and they do a flag ceremony. So come on down.
Will the audience please rise? Color Guard, advance. Please place your right hand over your heart and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color Guard, post the colors. Color Guard dismissed. You may be seated.
Where's our scout leader? Will you want to come and introduce the boys real quick?
I believe it was said that we're from El Cajon Cub Scout Pack 395, and this is my den, so you guys can turn around. This is Carson, Dario, Alex, and Lucas.
And who are the two who are missing?
And the two older scouts, these are Boy Scouts, Joshua and Asher. They're And the requirement that we've been working on this month is called Building a Better World. And so they're learning about community and country and their duty as citizens.
Well, so thank you so much for coming. We're really proud of you, boys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know what? I think Councilman Kendrick would like to say something.
Microphone to. Well, I was a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout a long time ago. So I still remember something from the Boy Scouts. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Did I get it right? All right, thanks. So, being in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts, what I learned followed me my entire life and helped me tremendously. So, all of you are on the right path. I guarantee it. So, thank you for coming, and I'm very proud of all of you.
Are you going to stay for the whole meeting?
We're going to stay for a little bit.
So they're being punished then. Okay, I understand. No, you go whenever you feel like you've had enough. All right. All right. Agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
Council, any agenda changes? Okay. We are at public comment. This time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, council, authority, and agency members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any cards under public comment?
No cards for public comment.
All right, we're now at public hearings. Item 100 is for a planned unit development, and I'll ask our staff to introduce this item. Hi, Noah. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Noah Alvey, Deputy Director for Community Development, and I'll be presenting this item tonight. All right, so our project description. The project tonight is a two-lot subdivision, and it's former Caltrans right-of-way. It's actually not part of a planned unit development, and it's just a standard map to approve two houses. So the difference there is that there's no obligation for the developer to build these houses. So it's just to approve those two lots, and then in the future, the developer can come forward to build the houses. So the primary issue that we're going to be discussing tonight is the conditions of approval, which require the construction of street improvements that would be connecting Oakdale and Mint Avenues, and that's consistent with what the general plan has envisioned. So the project site is shown on the general plan as low-density residential, or LR for short, which does allow up to 10 dwelling units. The current zoning is RS6, or single-family residential, which is consistent with that LR general plan designation. And the overall site is about 9/10 of an acre, or 38,000 square feet. The site is generally flat, except for the northerly portion of the site, where the Forester Creek does run through the property. So here you can see the general plan map, and so we added this in just to illustrate the location of the low-density residential general plan designation, as well as the property that's been designated for the connection of Oakdale and Mint Avenues. So the portion of the site that's designated as low-density residential accounts for about 30,000 square feet, and then the remainder, the planned street. In conjunction with the general plan, I also wanted to note that the general plan Goal 6 and Objective 6.3 do indicate that public facilities, such as streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and drainage channels, should be completed to facilitate traffic needs. So here we added just an aerial image of the subject site. The intent here was just to kind of illustrate the overall pattern of development in the neighborhood. So you can see primarily single-family homes to the east, and then to the west there are some multifamily uses as you go along Oakdale over towards East Main Street. So this is the site plan and the tentative map. And so we're showing the property lines here in yellow, and then the green boxes depict the potential locations for houses as well as accessory buildings. So as I said earlier, the locations for the houses are just conceptual in nature, and they're only presented as an example just to show that the feasibility of building on this site in the future. We've also shown Forester Creek in blue on the northerly portion of the site, and then the proposed road connection in gray on the bottom. So I want to highlight next to the proposed street, there's two orange boxes, and those boxes actually represent 1-foot strips of land that were reserved for a future street when the adjacent subdivisions were approved. So on the east side, next to Mint Avenue, map number 3694 was actually approved in 1957, and that authorized 217 lots that were fronting on Mint Avenue, Macon Street, Trenton Street, Verdon Street, Onyx Avenue, Jade Avenue, and Galena Street. And then to the west of the subject site, a second map, number 4168, was approved in 1959, and that approved 11 lots that were fronting on Oakdale Avenue between North 3rd and Durham Streets. So each of these strips of land do frame the subject property, and that's for the purpose of public street completion once the property were to develop in the future. So lastly, I want to note on the site plan the location of the red line, and that's there to depict the location of overhead utility lines that are crossing the site. The utility lines and easements were a constraint to alternative designs that the applicant considered in conjunction with this project. So here we have two images of the site that are taken from Oakdale Avenue looking east. So again, orientating you can see the overhead utility lines bisecting through the middle of the site. You can also see the sidewalk ending right at the subject site. So these images are on the opposite side of the site, so on Mint Avenue and then facing towards the west. So again, here you can see the utility lines on the northerly portion of the street. On the left, you can see the sidewalk, again connecting and ending directly at the subject site, as well as the sidewalk on the northerly side of Mint Avenue. And then I added these images from Mint Avenue. These just show the flat topography of the site. It's fenced right now, so I just leaned over the fence to take a couple of pictures. But it shows the overall flat topography and suitability for 2 single-family homes at that property. So the public hearings for this request started at the Planning Commission on May 3rd. And at that time, 8 individuals did speak in opposition. After public testimony, the applicant did request a continuance to evaluate different options for the project, and that was related to the concerns from the neighborhood about connecting the streets. So following that first Planning Commission meeting, the applicant did meet with staff, and we sat down with his engineer and tried to look at different options for how an alternative plan could be developed. One of the major constraints to an alternative plan was having sufficient space for a fire department turnaround so that a fire apparatus entering the site could turn around if the road were not to be connected. So with the road being connected, that fire apparatus would need to turn around. It could travel to the east or to the west in either direction. Ultimately, the applicant gave us a couple conceptual designs. None of those were deemed feasible, and he decided that he just wanted to go back to the original design that he had submitted and that went to hearing on May 3rd. So he didn't ultimately get to a point where he had a conceptual design that the fire department could support. So on July 19th, we did move forward with the second Planning Commission hearing, and that's again with that original design showing the road being connected. At that hearing, several commissioners did express a desire to look for a compromise and to see if there was something that could be done between the developer and the neighborhood to see if there was an alternative design. But ultimately, the Planning Commission acknowledged that the general plan anticipates that road being connected, and they voted 3-1 to approve the tentative parcel map, and we had 1 absent commissioner at the hearing. So now just to go over the appeal. So the appeal indicates that the appellant is requesting to revisit and modify the general plan as it relates to the parcel requirement, including the road thoroughfare between Mint Avenue and Oakdale Avenue. So the reasons for the appeal are included on this slide, and they include increased crime rates and activity, no traffic demand for the road, increased traffic accidents and incidents, decreases in home values, and then the health and safety of residents and children. I also wanted to note that there was, as part of the appeal, the applicant had a petition of 97 signatures that were in opposition to the tentative parcel map. So as it relates to crime, the appeal indicates potential increased crime rates and activity. So in general, from a staff perspective, we would note that vacant lots can attract crime and squatters. According to city records, there haven't been any issues at the subject site, but the city has experienced issues with crime and squatters on vacant properties throughout the city. Typically, though, when you see a vacant property develop and is activated with uses, a lot of those unwanted and derelict activities tend to go away. So from a staff perspective, we would see the development of the subject site eliminating a vacant lot and resulting in new homes with residents that are able to monitor the street, have eyes on the street, and contribute towards the safety of the neighborhood. So traffic congestion is also listed in the appeal, as well as a lack of traffic demand for the road connection and potential increases in traffic accidents and incidents. The appeal also includes documentation from the Community Environmental Defense Services regarding cut-through traffic on dead-end streets. So the planned road connection would serve to reduce traffic congestion at the intersection of East Madison Avenue with Trenton Street and Verdon Street by allowing access to East Main Street via the new road connection at Mint and Oakdale Avenues. So that would have a positive impact on those areas down on East Madison Avenue. Staff would note that the existing roads in the vicinity are operating at acceptable levels, so the planned road connection wouldn't alleviate any failing road intersections that are nearby. So just overall, from a traffic management perspective, the road connection would increase vehicle trips on Mint and Oakdale Avenues, but it would more equally distribute vehicle trips in the neighborhood by taking that pressure off of East Madison Avenue. Additionally, the associated trip reductions on East Madison would also reduce congestion during school hours, as well as the likelihood of accidents or incidents related to heavy traffic. So we wanted to put together a diagram to kind of illustrate how traffic demand would be reduced on East Madison Avenue. So here you can see traffic trips that would be originating from the northeasterly portion or northeast of the subject site. So you see a trip starting from where the star is located and wanting to go on to East Main Street or go to the north or towards Interstate 8. As of right now, they would have to travel along the orange line. So they would go all the way down to East Madison Avenue, travel to the west, and then either go north on 3rd or continue on over to East Main Street. You can see the red line with the new connection. If the Oakdale and Mint Avenues are connected, that would allow those vehicle trips to just travel west towards Oakdale and then directly over to East Main without having to travel all the way down to East Madison Avenue. So this diagram was provided by the appellant, and it shows the areas identifying traffic congestion and showing how a response from Fire Station 8 would not change if the road connection is completed. So staff wanted to acknowledge that this statement is true if emergency responses from Fire Station 8, if emergency responses only came from Fire Station 8. However, some response units potentially could be dispatched from other stations, other agencies, or while in the field. So in this diagram, we wanted to illustrate a circumstance where a emergency response was coming from East Main Street or from the west or north of the subject site. So you can see along the orange line here, in current conditions, that fire apparatus truck would have to travel, if it were to go on the east side of the subject site over to Mint Avenue, a more circuitous route down to East Madison Avenue, and then back up towards Mint Avenue. So with the road connection, fire responses off of East Main Street would be quicker. So this slide shows the findings that are necessary in order to grant the appeal. So the council would need to find that the map is not consistent with the general plan, that the site is not suitable for the type of development and proposed density, that the design of the subdivision or improvements are likely to cause environmental damage or health problems, or that the design of the subdivision would conflict with easements acquired by the public for access. So the findings from staff are that the proposed map is consistent with the general plan regarding the proposed residential uses and the planned road connection, that the overall site is flat and suitable for residential development, that the site plan illustrates sufficient space to accommodate the 2 single-family homes, and that the subdivision would not cause environmental damage or health problems. And then lastly, that the design of the subdivision and the road connection is consistent with the 1-foot strips of land that were dedicated for future road connections in the 1950s. So the recommendation from staff is to affirm the decision of the Planning Commission and deny the appeal of the tentative parcel map with the conditioned public street improvements consistent with the general plan. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Let me see if there's some questions, Noah. Questions? Start with Gary.
What about ambulance access? How does that play into this, whether the road goes through the vacant lot or not?
It would be similar to the analysis that we provided, which is if the road goes through an ambulance traveling from north of Interstate 8 or from the west of the subject site would have a more direct route to Mint Avenue or to the portions of the subdivision to the north and east of the subject site. So,
Idea what the time of the delay would be in such a case?
So we didn't study the time of delay, and that was one of the issues with the review of the project, because since the project was consistent with the general plan, it was exempt from CEQA and didn't require any special studies. So if the general plan were to be proposed to be amended and we wanted to eliminate that road connection, that's what would trigger a special study to look at how long emergency response times would take.
Thank you.
Steve?
Do you have any information on the number of accidents on Madison, say north of Maine?
I mean, similar to the last response, we didn't do any traffic studies or analysis on accidents. We just looked at overall the trip distribution that would occur. So the trip distribution would reduce trips down on East Madison and divert those, but we did not study accidents.
Okay. And you said the applicant submitted a petition of 97 signatures.
Yes, the appellant.
Oh, the appellant. Mm-hmm. Okay, not the property owner.
Correct.
Okay. Do you happen to know where those 97 signatures came from? Did they come from the project area?
The signatures were included as an attachment to the staff report, and they list the addresses for each of the signatories on that. So many of the roads that I mentioned in the presentation, that's where the majority of those signatures came from.
Okay. A question for the city attorney. The slide on the findings, is that the complete exhaustive list for us to consider, or are there other things we can consider?
Because these are findings required for the map, and that's the only thing really that the council has a decision on, or the planning commission had a decision on, those are the findings that must be made in order to deny the map. By state law, those are mandated. So as listed there by the department and referred to by Mr. Alvey, you have to make those 4 findings in order to deny the map.
You have to make those 4 findings
and we don't
to
have
deny the map.
Yeah. You have to find that it's inconsistent with the general plan. You have to find that, if you want to put that one back up. Noah?
Sure.
Those findings are to grant the appeal, meaning to deny the map, essentially. It's
And
not consistent with the general.
I'm sorry, what does not consistent with general plan mean?
In other words, if the general plan called for a different density of residential development or different the circulation element for the general plan provided for a different location of a road or access, I'm sure there's more. If it didn't have enough open space utilities or things like that, that couldn't be placed. Noah knows these by heart, not me. But.
Yeah, I would add, I think the good thing to add would be the suitability of the development. So when we looked at the constraints, you had Forester Creek along the northerly portion of the property. And so you want to make sure that an appropriate density is being proposed. So that's why we provided the diagram showing the house locations. Because based on the size of the house or the size of the lots, they could propose additional lots, but they have chosen to propose a map that's consistent with the general plan and then suitable for the site. And so that's the suitability aspect of it is a lot of the discussion.
Yeah, that's the second bullet there too. So those 4 things, you've got to be able to find that those statements are true in order to grant the appeal and deny the map. It's one of those reverse type of things. If you
I understand.
if you prove the map, then you would say that there are no findings to support the appeal.
Is it true the Planning Commission does not have the authority to change a general plan, but the council does?
Yes.
So when you say not consistent with the general plan, it's whatever the council decides is the general plan
Right.
at whatever time. Is that true?
The Planning Commission in this case could have found consistent and did find consistency with the general plan. It's an appeal, so now it becomes a council to have to make that final decision on the appeal, just as the Planning Commission did before.
The Planning Commission did not have the option to change the general plan.
Correct, yeah.
The council does have the option to change the
Not
general
tonight, but yes, you do.
plan. Thank you.
And another point that Mr. Alvey made was because it is consistent with the general plan, it's properly zoned. There is no requirement to comply with CEQA. It meets one of the exemptions. I can't remember. It's 21 or 20. I can't remember something.
It would just be an infill exemption.
Infill exception, 21 or 32.
Class 32.
32. So it's an infill exception. So it means we don't have to go through any CEQA review at all.
And do we have to find all 4, or can we find any one?
That, I think you need all 4, but I don't know if that's true. Noah?
So it would be, in order to, any of these are an option. So if the council were to say it's not consistent with the general plan or it's not suitable for the type of development, any one of those questions would be cause to deny the map. And so if you uphold the map approval and deny the appeal, you'd be finding that it's consistent with the general plan, suitable for the type of development, and then the last one, the subdivision and improvements are consistent with those easements that were acquired in the 50s.
Okay, so we could find any one of those true as stated above there, and the other three we could disagree with, and that one would be the grounds for granting the appeal, for instance.
Correct.
Okay, just
And
want to
I
know.
stand corrected. I apologize, but I knew Noah knew that.
Okay, I just want to get the ground rules straight. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, with regard to other options that were presented to the community and the developer, can you run through some of those so we're not kind of trying to come up with solutions as well from the dais? And then my other second question is, one of the hindrances is having a fire apparatus be able to turn around. Are they able to turn around now with the existing street? And so, yeah, maybe you could add some context to that.
So I don't know what options were directly shared with the neighbors. The applicant, his name is Delgesh. Delgesh worked directly with them and talked to them. He's here tonight and can speak to the efforts that he made at looking at those options. What I can speak to is the meeting that we had after the continuance, where we sat down with his engineer and looked at options for closing the road and then what would be required. So the primary issue for fire access is that typically you don't want to see a dead end of more than 150 feet where a fire apparatus would then need to back out. And so that's typically where you see the fire department turnaround be required. And so the issue is that as of right now, it's essentially about 150 feet from Mint, where it ends, to the closest adjacent street there. And so the fire department turnaround would then be required if the road were not to be built through. So one of the issues that the applicant had was that when they looked at alternatives, there were those constraints of the existing infrastructure. So you had the overhead utility lines that were traversing along the north of the planned street. There were those overhead utility lines. And then trying to factor that in with the fire department turnaround. They submitted 2 sketches. Both of those sketches were not accepted by the fire department. And then when we asked for additional input or additional options, the applicant said, I don't want to spend any additional time working on other options. I want to go forward with what the general plan says. And so as staff, we were required to bring that forward.
Thank you. I think those are...
Hi. Question. If the street goes through, what happens with the land on either side of the new street? So if I'm looking at that picture correctly, the street's going to go through, but there's still going to be some vacant land on either side, correct? Who owns that land?
So the subject site includes the entire proposed street. And so the vacant land north of the proposed street is all owned by the applicant, and that's where the 2 lots would be subdivided. South of the subject site is also some former Caltrans land that has been sold, and the property owner to the south has spoken to staff about subdividing or additional development, but they haven't submitted anything formally. So there's potential for more homes, essentially, is the short answer.
So if we, for example, if we grant this appeal, we're just going to start all over again when the next developer comes in if they don't want to, because if they decide to develop that land, now we're back to square one. Because they're going to trigger, most likely they'll trigger that clause from the general plan to put the street through, correct?
So the street is actually only triggered by the map that's been proposed because the adjacent property, let me just make sure I have the street name right, on Durham, I believe. Directly to the south. That property, yes, on Durham. That property, that's the former Caltrans site, fronts on Durham Street, so it has its own legal frontage on a city public street. And so it wouldn't, if the road were not to go through, it could still develop.
Sorry, I don't mean to have
try
this
again, it's
deer
okay.
in the headlight look, but can we go back to the picture then? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Okay, so that odd-shaped piece is the property.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes all the way across the red line, which is where the street would go, correct?
Correct. Maybe let's go to the site plan. So the orange strips represent those 1-foot strips of land that were reserved for the future road connection. And then
Okay.
you can see the street in gray. And then the area below the street fronts on Durham Street. And so that property could be developed and get its access from a city-maintained public street.
But that's what
on
I'm
Durham.
saying. If that's where where's the end? Is it on the left or the right? When we're looking at the picture, where's the end of the street, the dead end?
There's dead ends where both orange lines are. Those are both dead ends.
So what is on either side of the orange line?
Those are both, here I could do. So this is the east side. So there's just the rail barrier preventing access.
Right.
And then the end of the sidewalk. And then on the east side of the site, similarly, it's just a fence and
Okay.
some signs.
Apparently I'm missing something, but I'll take your word for it. So if a developer comes in on the other property to the south, they don't have to, they're not obligated to make the road go through. If the owner of the subject property says, you know what, I'm done, I'm out of here. The owner of the south property, they don't have to open that road?
The owner of the property to the south could still develop the property.
Right.
One nuance in this application is that the applicant for this subdivision is required to do the full street improvements, and so it's typically only requirement to have half-width street improvements
Okay.
be required. And so as part of this, the city worked with the applicant to get a reimbursement agreement in order to have him be reimbursed for the portions that are adjacent to the site on Durham.
Okay.
So it could happen in the future, but if council were to say we don't want, or the road isn't going to go through, the property to the south could develop independently of that road. It doesn't require access to it.
Okay, I think I understand now. I just, without actually going out there and looking, it's hard to tell from pictures. So currently, the fire truck is able to turn around in this dead end. Is that what I'm understanding?
We do have the fire chief that's available to answer questions about fire trucks, but the right now there's not sufficient space for a fire department turnaround. It's just a dead end, and the fire apparatus would
Okay.
need to back out.
And how many calls, do you happen to know how many calls for service that we get in this area? I mean, do we get a lot of calls? And are they being hindered, being able to get to the calls? Are they being hindered by the street being closed?
So we didn't collect data on calls for service in relation to this application. Obviously, the existing condition, fire apparatus are going to get there as soon as they can and as quickly as possible using the available streets that are there.
Okay. I understand that this has been on the general plan for 38 years or so. And I'm just asking a question. I'm not casting aspersions on planning or anything. But since you guys are subject matter experts, wouldn't this have been something that could have been said from the very beginning when the guy walked in with his plans and said, hey, I'd like to do this, and as you're going through and pulling up the maps to see where he's talking about, oh, you know what? This is going to cause this road to be open because of the general plan. Shouldn't that have been said? I understand. I watched the Planning Commission meetings, and I understand that it is technically the due diligence of the property owner to know this. But, like most of us, we don't do this. We don't know about it. And so being that the planning department is the subject matter expert, it would just seem like this would be something that they could let people know so that we're not coming to this situation at the end of the day.
Ms. Mitchell, when an applicant comes forward, we typically will sit down with the applicant and we'll
Okay.
walk through the general plan, any zoning requirements. So that meeting occurred. So that's why that's why the applicant submitted an application with the development with the road built, because he knew upon meeting with us that was going to be the requirement.
Okay. And thank you for that clarification, because, I'm not going to be building. I'm not a developer. I have no clue.
And I think one of the nuances, too, could be the question that's asked to staff. So if someone, like part of this application being submitted, were to come in and say, "Hi, Noah, when is this road going to be built?" I would say the city has no plans to build this road because it's not in our budget or as part of our capital improvement program. But the answer is different if someone comes in and says, "I want to develop this property. Do I have to build a road?" Automatic answer, yes, it's on the general plan. You need to build it.
Okay.
So that's where I think that can be the nuance between the type of question that's asked.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And I see this issue from both sides. And so that's why I'm asking, because I see it from both the city standpoint and what we have, but I also see it from residents' standpoint. So I'm trying to get all the information to make that determination. Thank you.
I think Gary, I owed him.
Okay. If the road were to not go through, who would be responsible for keeping down the brush?
Well, it would always be the property owner's responsibility to maintain the subject site. So if it is not subdivided and the land's not dedicated to the city for street purposes, it would remain the property owner's responsibility to properly maintain and mitigate brush.
And would that the property owner be the developer, or could he deed it over to the two houses that he built?
It would be up to the developer or property owner to, if he decides to sell those lots. The applicant in this case has indicated to staff that he's building a house for himself.
Okay, thank you.
Did you do any traffic studies? If Mint Avenue were opened, there's going to be more cars going through that. Did you estimate the traffic volume both there and on Oakdale between 2nd and Main? Because I assume, people coming home on the northerly portion of that development today they get off at 2nd Street and then take a left on Madison and go home, but they would take a left on Oakdale and come up Oakdale and then cross the street and go through to Mint and go on. Any traffic estimates, car trips, things like that?
So we weren't able, just because the project was exempt from CEQA and consistent with the general plan, we couldn't compel the applicant to provide us any analysis to the contrary. But we did, in conjunction with the city traffic engineer, we did look at an estimate of the number of trips that it would add and estimated those based on the houses that are to the north and east of the site at right around 190 trips per day.
190 trips would go on Mint Avenue. If you lived in the cul-de-sac of Mint, you might see up to 190 cars, not unique cars, but because some people would do multiple trips, 190 trips. And I would assume that would be the same for the section between Main and 2nd.
From
whatever. 190
Oakdale
trips is what I'm...
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if this is consistent, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but could we potentially, I've seen in other areas of the country, a gate, with a lock, a metal gate, so you could build the street all the way to allow access for those potential homes, and there's a gate there with a lock, and police and fire have access to it that could open up and turn around. I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but it would serve both purposes, access to both properties, north and south, and then not allow access through, it seems like that's the issue. Without hearing from the public, it seems like that's the issue, is more cars going through, preserving neighborhood. I don't know if that's an option. So,
California law is such that we could not make a public road and put a lock gate across it. And because the requirement is under the general plan, we would want the road built. It's always been planned to have a road there once those are developed. So the answer to your question is no, you cannot bar people from using a public road.
Oh, I wanted a clarification on something that Councilman Goebel asked. You said 190 trips a day.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 190 additional, or are there 190 there right now?
190 additional trips that would traverse through the new road connection.
Okay, thank you.
So today, if the fire truck goes to the dead end, it has to back out, I assume, because there's not a turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
And if the road's not built, it would go down the road and then have to back out. So does the requirement change because the development's being done? Or?
Well, the issue is that the length of the road then is extended by the new development, right? So if the properties on Mint develop where the conceptual houses were shown, so where the orange line is for that 1 foot strip of land, once you extend beyond there, you're in excess of 150 feet. And so that's where, in order to get access up to those houses, that's where the turnaround would be required.
So today a fire truck stops at the orange line.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying the requirement is if they go past the orange line, they have to have a place to turn around?
Correct.
And if there's not a street put there, but that remains empty space, how do I describe that?
Well, the fire department would continue to serve the subject site in a vacant condition. It's just that since the new development meets that threshold now for a road that's in excess of 150 feet,
Right.
if the road doesn't go through, that's where an apparatus turnaround would be required. So it's similar to like other planned unit developments that you might see, like on Marlene or Peach Avenue, where you have the road that goes all the way to the back with just the turnaround.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking there are some places in town that have these 3 or 4 homes in a little infill project, and my goodness, they don't have 150 feet turnaround. They go to the end and they got to back out. So what's different about this one?
Obviously, it's hard to generalize talking about all of them, but I would say any new project that comes through is being held to that standard. So it's analyzed, routed through Heartland Fire for their comments, and then the fire marshal provides us that feedback on what they need in order to provide services to a new development site.
Can I understand why it's important for a fire truck to have to turn around instead of versus backing out? That's Mr. City Manager, that's probably a question for a different person, perhaps?
I think that's a question for the fire chief.
I agree.
What I'm trying to figure out, I mean, turning around, does that mean you're done? And what's the difference between that and just backing out? What am I missing?
So first of all, that is adopted from the Fire Code of 2019. That was adopted by City Council. It's readopted every 3 years. So this is a policy that the council has adopted.
Okay.
And that policy is that anything over 150 feet requires a hammerhead or some kind of turnaround for a fire engine, rather than trying to back out 150, 200 feet.
Okay, so
anytime
something
you're backing up a
2019.
large piece of apparatus, there's hazards associated with that. Cars parked along the street, people out backing it up, and that kind of thing.
Just as there is today. I get that. So where's the 150-foot marker in this drawing?
So if you look at the currently right now, there's only one address that is out in front of Mint that if a fire engine parked in front of, that would have to back up maybe one residential lot, and that's 1550 Mint. So right now, currently, it's one residential lot that they would park out in front of and have to back out of to make that turn.
Which is on the right side of the picture.
It's on the east side of the street.
Yeah.
Which would be the right side is on the drawing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody? A couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like one of the points of contention were the length of time that the lot would remain vacant. Was I right in understanding that?
The length of the time that the subject site had remained vacant?
Yeah, I guess, or was going to remain vacant after the approval. There was some concern it would become a nuisance property.
The appellant provided some information about crime stats, and in conjunction with the Planning Commission hearings, they expressed concerns that the road connection would then allow more criminal activity to traverse through the road connection.
Okay, so they're planning to build on the site right away?
I would have to defer to the applicant who's in the audience, but he's indicated a desire to start submitting his building permits and start building out the site.
All right. That was my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
You guys can hear me. So, what is the length between the two orange posts? Do we know the length of that?
I believe it's 131 feet.
So, if we stopped if we built the street all the way to the east, orange post, okay, then the fire apparatus would only need to back up 130 feet in order to get to Mint and make that 3-point turn. Is that right? Am I missing something? Chief, is that because the 150 feet threshold is something that is there?
I think one of the issues that came up when we were meeting with the applicant and his designer was that there was those constraints of the utility lines and the easements for that, and then looking at how the existing sewer and water infrastructure that were planned to connect through there and how those would all be addressed. So they tried to propose a turnaround in conjunction with that would have been accessed off of Mint Avenue, but they weren't, in the first two tries that they had, they weren't able to come up with something that was supported by the fire department. So that's where the applicant said, I don't want to study this further. I'd like to move forward with the road going through.
But, so I guess my question is, would it be in compliance with the 150-foot threshold? With they would, if they pulled all the way up to the east side of that potential proposed street extension, backing out would only be 130 feet until the truck could potentially back out onto Mint and do a 3-point turn. Does that satisfy the 150-foot threshold with regard to the fire apparatus need?
Yeah, if the driveway length was less than 150 feet, that would meet the threshold that Chief Sweeney had mentioned. I know that they studied different options, but they didn't propose anything that was accessed off of Oakdale.
Okay.
The other issue that came up in looking at those alternatives is once you start to place that the turnaround within that 130 feet, it really constrains the remainder of the site where it's almost connecting the streets anyways. So that was one of the challenges that they had with looking at those alternative designs.
Okay. I don't know if I'm getting my question or if it's going over my head. Can a fire truck back out onto is this the perpendicular street, Oakdale and is that Mint?
So Macon is to the right, and then to the left is Durham.
I'm sorry, Durham.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using the wrong street. Durham is
directly below the orange line.
Directly below the orange line. So could a fire truck back up and turn onto Durham and do a 3-point turn out?
I think there's definitely a feasibility for them to design a turnaround in that fashion, but that wasn't presented to staff.
Okay, so there is an option to say we could potentially have the road not be connected on the east side. They would grant access to the development, and a fire apparatus, if it's still blocked on the east side, could back up that 130 feet onto Durham, 3-point turn, and then exit. That's with regard to the fire apparatus capability and having our firefighters not put any cars or people in danger, people backing up, for them backing up too far. That's a potential.
Yes, but the one thing that I would add is that if we look at amending the general plan, we would have to do those technical studies in order to look at whether or not the safety of providing services to the those areas that are to the north and east of the subject site, and looking at the traffic studies and other impacts that there would be to the neighborhood. So that's kind of where the concern came in from the applicant, where they'd have to go through a CEQA study, an initial study, do a negative declaration, circulate that for comments, do the necessary technical studies, and so
which is
a significant cost.
It's a long time. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Noah. Thank you very much.
More questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any comment cards?
Yes, we do, sir. We have 8 speaker cards. The first one is Carly Flott.
Brought your own fan club, huh?
Hi, I'm Carly Flott, F-L-O-T. I live at 1550 Mint Avenue, so I am next to the vacant lot on the east side. So I'm here today to speak on behalf of my community and my neighbors. While I know nearly the 100 people that signed our petition would love to be here, but many of them have young children or are older, making it more difficult for them to commit to this 7 p.m. time. As a community, we're requesting that the general plan, specifically the road improvements that would create a thoroughfare between Mint and Oakdale that have been submitted, be revisited and revised based on how the community has changed in nearly the last 60 plus years. We understand that the road improvements were originally added to the general plan. However, the general plan was suggested and created several decades ago. Many aspects of our community have evolved and changed since then. Opening the road between Mint and Oakdale will negatively affect our community in multiple ways. Opening the road will bring increased vehicle traffic flow, crime, transient traffic in our quiet residential neighborhood. Opening Mint to Oakdale will encourage those already speeding drivers that cut through other streets in the neighborhood to now, excuse my language, haul ass on our residential streets. Has a traffic study been completed? If so, why hasn't this information been shared with us? If you haven't been to our neighborhood in the morning, I highly suggest you check it out. People fly down Madison, cut across Main, and fly down Oakdale to 2nd to get to the freeway. A once safe, quiet neighborhood will become a raceway for impatient students, parents, and people in a hurry. Many of us were attracted to Granite Hills, El Cajon specifically, because of the schools in our neighborhood. There are over 8 schools within a 5-mile radius. Many of our kids in our neighborhood spend a significant amount of time outside, specifically in front of my house, playing basketball, riding their bikes, and being kids. Opening this road will create an unsafe environment for our kids based on the increased traffic, foot traffic, especially those who will wander in and down from Main and 2nd Street. Opening this road allows for criminals to easily access our neighborhood and flee. We already have more than ideal thefts, vandalisms, drug deals, and homeless issues within our neighborhood. Making this road a thoroughfare takes down our last line of defense. Having one way in and one way out has kept our community tight and truly allowed us to look out for one another. All these aspects ultimately decrease the value of our homes. As a community, we feel misled. We had very limited amount of time to provide adequate support for our appeal. Several of us attempted to discuss our concerns with multiple people within the city council, and our request to meet with them was never followed up on, nothing was scheduled, and no feedback was provided as to why this request could not be heard. We are very disappointed in our city's lack of response to its concerned citizens that pertain to the safety and welfare of this community. I'm almost done. I know I have 10 seconds. I'm sorry. While we understand the owner of the lot has financially put out a significant amount of money in building plans, we're proposing the general plan, specifically the road improvement, be declined and altered to meet the community standards for a dead end or keep the road as it's always been, or a cul-de-sac. Neighbors who have lived in this community, some for over a decade and more, should not be responsible for the property owner's lack of due diligence or understanding of the options given to him during this plan building process. We are trying to protect and preserve our neighborhood. However, the current general plan is outdated, and it should be taken into consideration all that has evolved and changed since it was originally proposed. We have nearly 100 signatures from neighbors that are in opposition of this road, and that should mean something. That's it.
Thank you.
Questions? Hey, Bill, you got questions?
Oh, one of our council members has a question.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Carly. You did contact me, full disclosure, and I told you I couldn't weigh an opinion because it was going to be a public hearing, and I couldn't express an opinion. I couldn't provide.
It wasn't you specifically, but I do appreciate you following up.
I couldn't provide a judgment because, to be fair to the applicant, I couldn't do that. So
we understand.
But you do remember me acknowledging
I do.
that. Okay. Tell me more about the 97 people who signed your petition. Where are they located?
So that is everybody to the east of me. And I think there was a couple of signatures from the west side, so Oakdale and Durham. But on the list that we provided, it has everybody's address. So it's pretty much everyone. If you're going down Madison, it's our whole neighborhood on the left-hand side.
And is everybody okay with the current response times for emergency response, knowing that
no one had any concerns. We went door to door with our kids and most of our neighbors and just talked to people about the street and what was potentially coming, if they cared if the street opened, if they didn't care if it opened, and 97 people did not want the road to go all the way through.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Derek Trimpe.
Good, Derek.
My name is Derek Trimpe. I live at 575 Macon Street, so that's directly to the right, the street right to the right of the new lots, and I'm 2 houses down. So my family has lived there since the 50s. My grandparents bought that house when it was brand new. My mom and her sister grew up in that house. I grew up with my grandparents in that house, and now my daughters are growing up in that house. My wife and 2 daughters, they walk Mint Avenue every single day, walking our dog. My oldest daughter is homeschooled. Walk the entire neighborhood. It's quiet. You don't see many cars. The only ones you see are people that live in that area or are visiting. If that street gets opened up, I know people have seen how Madison gets in the morning and in the afternoons. All those people are going to start diverting through that neighborhood. It's going to open up way more than 190 additional cars in that neighborhood every single day. It's going to be ridiculous. The transient population that's up on East Main Street right now, all the druggies, they're going to come right up there. SDG&E has a substation right in that neighborhood that's, again, a vacant lot. That's going to get full of transients. We've already had some problems with some people in these vacant lots. Nobody will do anything about it. So once they get up in there, SDG&E is going to have a big problem with that. So I would like to see that road closed. I don't care if he builds his house. I'm all for him getting his lots, building his house. I support that. But I would like to see that road stay closed. Response times, my daughter had a febrile seizure when she was 4 years old. El Cajon police, paramedics, fire department, no problem. They all showed up just like that. So that's my opinion, and I'd like to see that road stay closed.
Questions? Thank you, Eric.
Thomas Weller.
Mr. Weller?
My name is Thomas Weller, and I live at 504 Macon, and I've been a resident of El Cajon for 50 years, and I have seen the traffic increase dramatically from the school going to and coming from, and I've seen the traffic on Durham going crazy, and the people on Durham really disliking it. I don't want that traffic coming down Macon Street. We've got children that play in the street. We've got my wife and everybody else backing out of their driveways, and we don't need these high-speed drivers coming down our street to take the shortcut to get to Main Street. I'd very much prefer that it remain a closed area as far as that goes for crime as well, because in previous years we've been able to catch vandals and such because the road was closed down there. We've had many incidents that I could relate, but I'm not going to take the time. And thank you for letting me speak. I'll save you a couple minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Weller.
Tim Swing.
Well, sir, welcome.
I'm Timothy Swing. I live on Trenton Street in El Cajon. I have a question for the council and our illustrious staff. How many of you have lived in the house you live in now for 45 years and it's within the city limits? Nobody? That's what I thought. Tom Wellerher just got up, has been in El Cajon longer than I have. But I've been in the county longer than he has. So I guess we're the old guys that rule. We don't like your idea of opening up that land. There's no water line for the fire department. There's no water line for the houses. There's no gas line. And there's no sewer line. When I was here in May, I complained about your city services, which is supposed to maintain the sewer lines. We still got cockroaches coming out of our bathtubs and showers because you don't keep the sewer lines clean. What do you think's going to happen when you open up that land across there and you have to put a new sewer line in? And you're going to have to call Helix Water to put in a new water line. And San Diego Gas and Electric for a new gas line. The only thing that goes across there is the public utilities line, telephone and electricity and cable. This is the old Bel Air Estates of El Cajon. Started in 1957. Why don't you wise up and cancel this idea of putting two houses there? You should have bought the land and made it a park so people from both sides could gather instead of trying to divide a neighborhood. You just don't think. El Cajon is my second home of San Diego. The high school down the street from the project is Granite Hills High. In the 1940s, it was my uncle's cornfield. You probably know very little about El Cajon's history because you don't bother to think about the past.
Sir, your time is up. If you could wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Norma Murphy.
Hello, Norma. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
You can pull that microphone down.
Oh, yeah, because I'm short.
I didn't say that, but
Good things come in small packages. That's all I got to say about that. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to listen to us. I'm sure you all got one of these packets, I hope, that we passed out. Perfect. It has actual research, and it proves exactly what opening a thorough street does to neighborhoods, communities, and what it brings into those neighborhoods. I've lived in my home, 1572 Mint Avenue, since 1999, raised 3 young children, played outside, felt safe, secure. But if that road goes through, the anxiety of not allowing your now grandchildren be allowed to play outside like normal children, that gets taken away from them. Not only that, it creates anxiety, stress on the parents and on the neighbors and the community. I've passed this thing out basically stating all the benefits of having a cul-de-sac. It raises, your property value goes up, goes down when you open up the street. Crime goes up when you put a thorough street compared to cul-de-sacs. Proven, psychological, crime, you name it. Obviously, you all are elected officials by the people, and you're obviously up there for a reason. And we as a community would like to work together with our elected officials to make El Cajon a safe environment for all. Unfortunately, I've got reports stating the growing crime, the growing homeless population, drug population, and stuff. I've got proven facts stating that all the homeless, guess what? Guess where they're moving to? El Cajon, Encinitas, which I was shocked, Lakeside, Santee, and unincorporated areas. But El Cajon, in 2020, in 775 in 2020, it went up to 68.8% in 2022. That's just one of the stats that's I found. And then I found another stat, 2022. Guess what we're rated? Worst cities, highest crime cities. We were rated, as far as violent crimes, property crimes in general, total, we were rated number 11 out of 22. They compared us to Riverside, and Riverside and those guys have a lot higher population. But our crime rate has gone up so tremendously, and opening a thorough road is just going to bring in our line of defense.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your time is up. If you could just wrap it up, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. I'll make it, just give me 5 more seconds.
Sure.
This is Mr. Dell's property. He's got homeless, broke the line of defense, and decided to set up camp. When notified, he didn't care. So I'm just saying, we do not want a thorough road. We do not want an investor or somebody moving into our neighborhood that's not going to protect the integrity of the rest of the neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, Steve?
I'd have to ask, if he develops the property, doesn't that make the homeless situation on his property go away?
Well, if you put a dead-end cul-de-sac, that it's a deterrent. It's a deterrent. We have a very tight-knit neighborhood. We all look out for each other. Tom patrols the neighborhood while we're all working and stuff like that. And if anybody's there that doesn't need to be there or belong there, he makes sure they move it on along.
I guess my question is, do you think if he develops the property, it will get rid of the homeless on his property?
Probably not, but if we put a thorough street, it will. It will open up the door for more homeless.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
3 more speakers. The next speaker is Kathy Short.
Hi.
Hello. I just wanted to let you know that your vote for us will change the dynamic of our neighborhood. It would adversely change it to a negative environment. The traffic will increase, and I wish you would all come to that area, because the street ends and it's like we feel safe. And if it opens up, the traffic, people will drive down that street, Mint Street, so fast, and it'll be a danger to our children. And I don't understand why the needs of one outweigh the needs of the many. Thank you.
Michael Pepin.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Mike Pepin. I'm speaking on behalf. I live on Verdon Street. I own another home on Galena and a home on Jade. So I'm heavily invested in this neighborhood. I've lived there 42 years, my whole life. I grew up on Jade Avenue. I think you guys see the big picture here. We're all for this guy developing that area. It's been a dirt lot forever. It was where I used to play as a kid. I was never allowed to go past that area because nothing good was going on East Main Street. And it's still that way today times 10. My kids aren't allowed to go past that, Carly's house. It's very easily known, and if you were to drive the area when the sun's going down, the drug addicts are coming out like cockroaches in that area over on Main Street, and it's going to open it up right to Kennedy Park. They're just going to walk through our neighborhood, and it'll be free for all. I had lunch with the El Cajon PD, someone that I know, I'll leave his name out of it, just a week ago. I showed him this plan. He happens to patrol this area at night, and he looked at me and he said, do whatever you got to do with those neighbors to get this to stop. He said, it's going to change the whole dynamic of that area. He said, you're the one pocket left near the park in Granite Hills that's still safe, that we don't have to really worry about. We had to call 911 for my dad who lives on Jade just last week. Ambulance was there within 2 minutes. There's no issue here with response. Hey, sure, it looks good, free road. This guy's going to help pay for it. But at the end of the day, let's keep this neighborhood blocked off from just the nonsense that's going on in East Main Street. People ODing right underneath that bridge right there by Interstate 8 every night. Prostitution's out of control, coming right from the bird's mouth that's patrolling it every night. And you're going to open it up to my 4 kids, aging from 3 to 17, to just a real bad situation. So please think about all of us that live there. There's a reason why 96 or however many people signed this. We see it. The city wants it, sure. Hey, this guy's going to build, let's throw a road in, let's make him pay for, however much of it. But I responded to emergencies in this town for the last 11 years. I won't say where I work, but it doesn't matter if I come down Durham or if I come down Macon. I'm going to get there in the same amount of time. Let's see the whole big picture here. It's not about a fire truck. It's about getting a road through, so it looks good. Hey, the general plan was made up how long ago? 1950, are we really thinking about the general plan in 1950? That was looked at. It's a joke, but please take all of us that are on the other side into consideration.
Thank you.
Last speaker is Delgesh Shahab.
Afternoon.
Hello, welcome.
Welcome, thank you. I'm Delgesh Shahab, SHAB. I'm the property owner of the vacant property. I'm here today to say a couple stuff. First thing first, the homeless, I've tried to get rid of them, but I keep coming back. There's no control. Keep breaking the fence. I keep repairing the fence. That's, fortunately, I cannot control every single one of them. Second thing is, I spoke with the city manager prior before going in this process entirely. Before purchasing the parcel, I actually went to the city planner. I did my due diligence. I asked them, what should I do? What is the possibility? They never mentioned about the street going through at all. After I purchased it, long story short, I want to bore you guys with this entire discussion, but the final decision was made. I purchased already. Let's move forward. Whatever happens, happens. 2 weeks prior before my planning commission hearing, Noah mentioned, hey, there's an alternative plan about the amendment to the CEQA studies, which I look into it. I mentioned, let's move forward already. There's no time for me to do additional financing. I exhaust all my financial at that point. So I went inside, did a hearing, came back, and then there was some discussion with the neighborhood concern about what about other CEQA study, what does that mean? I take the consideration, I looked into it, I studied, I sit down with the engineer, again, more money was spent to do those additional due diligence to make sure I counter all those perspectives. And unfortunately, when I looked at the numbers, the CEQA was time-wise 3 to 5 years long, and additional couple $100,000 I have to spend on top of it, which I don't have at this point. The decision was made for me easy. I already spent, I'm at this point, I want to move forward with the first initial plan to go with the street dedication, and I'm here for any additional questions you guys have. Thank you.
Questions? Michelle, go ahead.
A question?
Yeah, I do. Okay. What happens if we were to go for the appeal? What would happen to you? Would you abide by it? Would you sell the property?
That's a great question. Actually, I linked it to it. I put it on the listing as well. I tried to get rid of it, matter of fact.
So you're trying to get rid of it now?
I tried to get rid of it. There's no barriers. The moment they look into it, now it's public. All the data, they back out instantly.
Okay, so now if we were to go with your neighbor's appeal, you're now stuck with the property and you can't get rid of it, so it's just going to be there and you're going to be out that money.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
And you are willing to go what the city says or what the general plan says, because we haven't made the council has not made any decisions.
Right, at this time, that's what I want to move forward with it.
And so if you move forward, then now you draw the ire of your neighbors.
I'm
And
aware
how
of it.
do you think that's going to affect your life living in a contentious neighborhood now?
There will definitely be an impact on it, but I hope the neighbor understands it. I'm with the neighbors, actually. I spoke with every single neighbor, the neighbors as well, prior before the commission hearing. Say, I expressed my feelings about the street as well. I never wanted to happen initially either.
Sure.
But now at this time, financially, I'm exhausted, all my resources. I look to any type of possibilities. There's nothing out there. There's only one thing forward. I already spent this amount of money and I tried to do with it, at least build one single family home. That's the initial plan from the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Steve?
What's your reaction to some of the comments that you've heard tonight about neighbors expressing concerns about speeding traffic and transients walking through? And what are your thoughts?
I actually live in an apartment in Oakdale, right before the street actually starts. I'm aware of it, that there's a lot of traffic going, especially in the morning. It's hard to tell what I feel about it, because at this point, as my financial point, there's no turnaround for me at this point. That's my conclusion. I hope if we can remove the entire street, which I don't have to pay for because I don't have the money, otherwise it doesn't stay there. That will be great. That will be beneficial for every single neighbors as well as for me. So I can just go ahead and build my single family home, what I initially planned from day one.
More questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
No more speakers, sir.
Okay, I make a motion then to close public hearing. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, council, it's up to us.
We see the list of findings again that we would have to make.
That's the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we got to follow the law, so let's take a look at the law. Bill, should we go through one by one and discuss the findings?
Yeah, I mean, or we could just, it looks like the only thing that's up for any debate is the number one. The proposed map is not consistent with the general plan. It is consistent with the general plan right now. The question is, does the council want to go through the process of looking into changing the general plan? I think that's the only question, unless somebody sees it differently.
Okay, but per city attorney, we would not be able to change the general plan tonight.
No, all you could do would be to postpone this go through the process of asking the city to bring us back an opportunity to change the general plan. And I don't even know what that would entail. Graham, if
So anytime you do a change to the general plan, you have to do a CEQA analysis. So in this case, it would be it'd be a negative declaration. So you'd have to look at probably your public safety element, your safety element, your circulation element, your land use element, any other elements?
So, yeah, essentially we would do an initial study to identify any potential issues associated with the project. So, like Graham had mentioned, we would look at maybe a special study on traffic, a special study on emergency response times, so that the true implications of the road not being built could be understood, and when a decision were to be made on the general plan amendment, considered at that time. So it would, at a minimum, you would do the initial study, and then potentially it could be a negative declaration through CEQA, or potentially mitigation measures if necessary.
How long would that take the staff to do?
So typically, initial studies and CEQA documents are prepared by the applicant, or we use consultants to assist us with that. For most, I would say an average of 4 to 6 months at the very shortest.
Could we table this for 6 months, Bill, or city attorney?
I wouldn't suggest you did that, but you could, if the applicant's willing to agree to a continuance for that long a period of time, you could ask them.
Okay. Question is to what would the costs be associated with this? I know you can't tell me specifically, but
so the challenge with the CEQA document is the cost of the technical studies, and so the scopes of those technical studies. I would say the most recent CEQA document that I worked on, the initial estimates came back from multiple consultants in the $50,000 to $75,000 range.
And then the negative declaration?
That would be inclusive of in that estimate for the final CEQA document.
Okay, and who would pay for that?
Well, that's the issue that we have at hand, where the applicant was given that option. He looked into it, and he decided that he didn't want to undertake that. So essentially, if council wanted to provide direction to staff, we would ask for funding to study that.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Steve.
So let me focus on the 3 words called serious health problems. You've heard people speak tonight about concerns about traffic safety, about shortcutting and speeding through the neighborhood. Do those health risks, safety risks, count as serious health problems?
Mr. Goebel, I'd say we have hundreds of streets just like this throughout the city, and we don't have kids being run over every day. So I understand the concern. I would be concerned if I lived on that street as well, and I live in a certain situation and my circumstance changes. But it'd be hard for staff to make a finding that that's happening all over the place, because it's not happening all over the place.
Well, let me ask the city attorney then.
Folks, if you could just allow this to have the conversation at this point.
So this is different to me because this is a change in the structure, potential change. I understand existing streets have speeding. We can talk about Washington all night long. But this will be a change from blocked to through. And we've heard testimony tonight about the change would result in an increased risk to children playing in the street, to speeding cars shortcutting to get over to Mint, to go down to Oakdale and Maine. Do those kind of testimony count as a serious health problem if they came true?
Well, Councilmember Goebel, most of the testimony, if not all of it, was anecdotal tonight. There is no evidence presented other than the opinion of the author of a paper that was found on the internet, I suppose, and not specific to this project. And so it's all the what ifs, or what, the unicorns, so to speak, what could possibly happen. And you don't have evidence to support that kind of a finding, that this creates a serious health risk.
So in point number 3, it says are likely to cause. So that doesn't say must show evidence that it will cause.
Well,
it is just does that infer that it's open to interpretation?
Well, court's going to tell us if in fact you said, yeah, we're of the opinion it's going to cause serious health problems, or could, or likely to cause serious health damage. The court's going to ask us, where is the evidence in the record that supports that? Anytime you make findings in land use decisions, including subdivisions and things of that nature, you have to have findings based on evidence. The evidence can't be speculative. The evidence has to be something that the court would say, okay, you've supported your finding with evidence in the record.
So in this case, we heard some testimony tonight about some people that looked up secondary research. Hey, if you open up a cul-de-sac, do this, does that count, even though it's secondary research?
It's up to you if you're going to rely on something that isn't specific to this project. I would caution you not to take a report that has been developed somewhere else and doesn't specifically deal with this property. If this report was commissioned by the neighbors to address this property specifically in their neighborhoods, I would say you've got evidence, because that would support the decision. Doesn't mean it's enough, but it's more than what we have right now.
Noah, I think more questions for Noah?
Well, so would it be possible, with regard to the studies, which the owner of the property, the subject property, has said he's spent a ton of money already and he's gassed with funding, is it possible for the city to cover the cost of those studies? Or I don't really know how that works to be able to do that.
Well, it sounded
or partial.
Well,
I don't know.
If the city were to initiate a general plan amendment, as Mr. Alvey said, it would be the city's decision, and therefore the city would pay for it.
Got it.
I guess that answers your question. The city manager would have to come up with, or the department would have to see if it's budgeted for that kind of work and those studies.
Wouldn't the entire purpose of changing the general plan to be to find a way to grant the appeal and thereby basically kill the project?
Well, ultimately, the general plan amendment, the purpose would be to eliminate the road connection, but then make sure that we're following state law when it comes to CEQA.
So what you're saying, that there would be a way, if the general plan was amended, to allow the applicant to build his property and not connect the road through.
Yes, and that's the option that we presented to the applicant, saying, if you want to study that, we can study that. You just need to submit the general plan amendment, go through that CEQA initial study, and do those technical studies so that we can have all that information when we come to council, so that they can consider having the road go through or having it not go through. And that's ultimately what he chose not to do after his analysis.
Okay.
But there's no guarantee. I mean, once we do the studies may say it's actually the opposite. There's a environmental impact if you don't do the road, right? So we don't know what the studies say yet. So you're not doing a study to eliminate the road. That's what you're going to study, but that's what the environmental study may not say that's the best solution.
Yeah.
I have.
Michelle, go ahead.
So if I get this straight, the applicant is tapped out. He's done all that he can. He's tapped out financially. The city decides we're going to explore this, making a change to the general plan. We cough up $70,000 thereabout. The report comes back negative, saying, yeah, if you leave it closed, according to state findings, whoever, this is not going to be feasible, it needs to go through. What's our liability as a city if the neighbors decide they want to sue us because we didn't follow their request?
I don't think Mr. Alvey likes to be lawyer, and I don't like to be a planner.
No, I'm sorry. I guess I should have directed it to you. But, I mean, I'm just asking a question. It's like, what's our liability?
And I don't like telling the public in an open session what kind of risk we have. I can tell you that if the neighbors sued us tonight, after tonight's decision, because you didn't grant the appeal, I would like that lawsuit better than if the applicant sued us if you granted, I'm sorry, if the applicant sued if you granted the appeal, or compare that to the neighbors suing if you deny the appeal, I would take the lawsuit where the neighbors sue us to deny the appeal.
I guess it's just really hard because the applicant is willing to go through. He's willing to just, okay, I'll abide by your rules. But then the neighbors are saying, no, we don't want you to abide by the rules. We don't care what happens to you. We don't care that you're losing money because you can't build how you want to build. So it puts us in the middle. And I'm just trying to figure out what is the best for the entire city versus just a neighborhood.
Ms. Meschel, you're never going to make a decision where everybody's happy.
No, I found
you
that
have
out.
a general plan that directs what's supposed to happen with this property. And other properties in the city, when you do a general plan amendment, you're going to have to go through an analysis of what elements need to be changed and how that's going to impact people on the south side, the north side, the east side, the west side, downtown. So it's going to be a very involved general plan amendment. It's not as simple as just saying this road and this property does not have to go through. I may be incorrect with that, but it's going to be, that'll be the project that triggers the general plan amendment, so it's going to be the focus. So you have to be very cautious about what decision you're making tonight.
And I would imagine that it would also set precedents for other neighborhoods to say, well, what about us?
Correct.
And now we've got to go back again and again and again to do CEQA reports at a cost of $75,000, $70,000 each time. And then we've got residents to say, well, why are you spending money on that neighborhood and this neighborhood to make a change to the general plan?
And you have people who have had to pay for their own CEQA review for their projects. That this would be a first in my 22 years here that the city council would have paid for such an exhaustive CEQA document, I would believe. Mr. Shute might disagree with me. Maybe it's happened. But I don't remember the city council ever voluntarily taking on the cost for the environmental review for a private development.
And I think that brings a point. I mean, I understand that the general plan was written, when I was a kid.
Well, but remember,
But it doesn't-
the general plan is renewed every so many years, 20 years or so. We have to have an amendment to the general plan. This is not the 1951 general plan. It's been amended for 57,
Okay, that's
90.
interesting.
So that's about 5 times, probably 4 or 5 times since it was adopted. So the last one would have been within the last 20 years.
Okay.
And this property existed like that within the last 20 years. Caltrans built Interstate 8 prior to the last 20 years.
Right. All right. Thank you.
So the amendment to the general plan would not just be focused on this scenario, so to speak. It would be an entire review.
I mean, ultimately, it would depend on the direction from the council on the scope of what council wanted to direct us to study. But there could be a narrow focus on looking at just this change to the general plan. The general plan amendment ultimately would be, a future discretionary decision by the council. So, we would put together the information, study it, look at the environmental impacts, and then present all that information to council. And then, as was alluded to earlier, the technical studies could result in information that cause council to determine that the road should go through in order to protect the safety and welfare of residents in the city.
So I think it's Hillsmont Drive and Petrie. Petrie comes up from Marshall, and it goes up into Fletcher Hills, and I think it's Hillsmont Drive. And I talked to Mr. Shute about this a while ago. there's a median in there of plants and stuff that blocks people from driving down that road into the valley floor, and it's Hillsmont's a public street, and Petrie, if I have the streets right, it's public street. Why is that median allowed to block traffic from going down the hill into El Cajon? Any idea? I may have to go to Mr. Shute since he and I talked about it.
Well, I would say ultimately any land use decision as it relates to how the roads are created and approved, it's studied and analyzed at the point that that decision's made. So at that time, there may have been different standards that were in place.
Okay.
Chief Swaney had alluded to the change in the fire code in 2019, having these new standards that are present. So obviously, 50 years ago, things were much different than they are today.
I'm told that the people up on the hill didn't want the people from the valley driving up the hill to take a shortcut up to West Main. But if you're saying, hey, that was the standard at the time and standards are different now, I understand.
Go ahead. Well, Steve, that's my neighborhood, actually. And that was my understanding. They didn't want to be by the poor people that lived down on my street. So... again, way before, my subdivision was built in 76, some in 74, so different regime, different laws.
Okay. More questions of Noah? Okay. Ma'am? Yeah. Ma'am? So, Noah, we're finished. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to reopen the public hearing. I'm going to let you come up and ask your question, okay? So I'm going to reopen the public hearing. Come on up. You don't need a motion for that. Hi, so what was your question?
Thank you. We're looking at the different items here that would grant us the appeal. And the one that all of us are standing by is the third one that says the design of the subdivision or the proposed improvements are likely to cause substantial environmental damage or serious health problems. Well, that's what we're talking about. Traffic, we're talking about homeless, all of that. I mean, anyone can pay for a study. I'll pay for the study. Yeah, but we can prove that there will be environmental damage. So
the problem there is that's a subjective kind of argument. That is a
well, all of those are subjective.
No.
Which one is? I meant that one's a subjective one.
Every single one of those in the question that you brought up, Mr. Attorney, you can guide me on this, but I believe that each one of those has a legal definition to that.
Well, consistency with the general plan certainly is less subjective. It's probably more objective than not.
And we're talking about
the third bullet.
Yes.
The third bullet, yeah.
Yeah. Again, you have to have evidence of serious health problems that will be created by this map, the development of this property. Environmental problems deal with plants, air quality, water quality,
right.
The environmental side of things. It's not as much although there is a safety sort of description that's analyzed as well. And
well, we'll pay for those studies. I meant we live in that street, and you're going to open it up for one person who says he wants to build a house. He says he'll build a house without moving that road. That's what we want. We want to keep that road from being built.
We understand, but I think what we're looking at tonight is we have to follow the law, and so we're trying to decide whether or not you have a case. But did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that?
That's fine.
All right. As long as I have
we have her name for the record, please. Oh,
ma'am,
Kathy Short. Is that Short?
Okay. As long as I've got the public hearing open, I'm not going to open it up again.
Oh, okay.
So if anybody else would like to say anything,
I'm Kathy Short.
I'll go ahead and entertain more.
You were saying something about
feel free to come on up. But I do ask that you fill out a speaker card when you're finished so that we can. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Amy Crozier. I live at 598 Macon Street, which is the exact opposite house of Carly on the corner there. I back up to Dell's lot. You keep saying, Mr. City Attorney, that you need evidence to support any negative impact on the neighborhood. However, I would like to ask you how you got your findings and how you came to these decisions on your findings, because Noah kept saying that there was no testing done to come to your findings. So where is your evidence? Where's your proof?
Well, first off, I hate to stay on forum, but if you ask me, I'll pass that on to the city attorney. That just keeps.
My apologies.
No, it's okay. You don't know. It just keeps decorum. So, Mr. Attorney, do you want to address that issue?
Yeah, this project does not require. Let me back up. It is the appellant's responsibility to produce the findings, produce the evidence, to support the findings, to grant the appeal. The decision was already made. The Planning Commission made the decision to approve the project, approve the two-lot subdivision, the tenant parcel map. And it was based on findings under the Subdivision Map Act. It was approved because it's zoned properly. It was approved for whatever other reasons that was contained in the Planning Commission resolution. I haven't read it. So those findings were already met. This appeal is the appellant's burden to show or provide proof of evidence or facts that would support these findings. So the city staff and the applicant are not do not have the obligation to come up with findings once again. If the council believed that there could be more findings, they would ask us for more testimony if they thought they needed more findings. But the point is the appellants have the burden of proof in this case.
That's fair. However, you are asking the city council to vote in agreement with these findings, that you are telling them to vote a certain way without telling them to vote a certain way, and that they can only vote this way because that's how it's always been done, without giving any proof whatsoever. And yet you're telling us that you didn't. You folks were asking questions. What tests have been done to show that there will be extra traffic, or how there will be extra traffic? What will there be? Will there be extra crime? What are the findings based off of? What tests did you do? You folks asked these questions. And the answer that Noah gave was, we did not do any of these tests to find these findings for you guys. However, these findings are saying there will not be extra crime. There will not be extra traffic. But then he said there will be 190 extra cars. Well, where did those findings come from is my question. So
I believe that there was a traffic study done. Yeah. No,
Mr. Alvey mentioned that he spoke with the traffic engineer, deputy public works director, whose department or his division gave a quick, on the napkin kind of estimate of what was likely going to be.
You gave a quick napkin estimate of what it could be.
I didn't, but the city's traffic engineer, who's trained to do these types of things, answered Mr. Alvey's question with an estimate of what he believed in based on his education, training, and experience, what would be the increase in average daily traffic through that area.
You're right. That is proof.
Thanks.
My apologies.
I appreciate it. Go ahead.
If I may just add on to that.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
Just as it relates back to the findings, just wanted to mention as it relates to the environmental damage aspect of things, typically we talked about Forester Creek, and so one of the issues that we'll look into a lot of times is water quality. So is there sufficient on-site treatment areas for water quality? And so the map was looked at. There's infiltration basins that have been planned for that subdivision. So we're looking at specifically, there's water quality treatments so that there's no environmental damage to Forester Creek. And then as it relates to the the overall findings and the lack of studies, I think the thing that I want to emphasize is that when the general plan is adopted by the city council, at that time, those technical studies are in place. And so even if it was in the 50s, the 70s, 90s, or the 2000s, that analysis was done and put in place so that projects can be streamlined. So one of the things we talk a lot about when it comes to housing is trying to streamline projects like these so that they can be consistent with the general plan and allow someone to build efficiently and quickly. So when it comes to the general plan, it was adopted and put in place, and so the applicant is taking advantage of that analysis that was previously done. So the issue as it relates to the comment from the public was that no new analysis has been done. That's because it was accomplished when the general plan was adopted, and if we change it, that's when we have to do that new analysis. So then as it relates to the findings, we talked about this a little bit before, but we talked about the map being consistent with the general plan as far as the density and land use that was proposed. He's not trying to overbuild the site. There's suitable land available to build the number of houses that are proposed. And then they are accounting for the environmental issues associated with water quality in Forester Creek. And then lastly, that the subdivision is consistent with those easements that were required by the city in the 50s for the future completion of the street. So that's kind of staff's summary of the findings.
Okay. Thank you. No. Graham, I have a question for you. This has gotten complicated, and we've talked about traffic studies. We've talked about a lot of this. And really, to me, a lot of this comes down to one question. Are we in the position to relitigate this whole process right now, or are we here solely to decide whether or not the appeal should be granted or not based upon the findings?
Correct. That's what the consideration. What's on the agenda tonight is the appeal.
So
not redesigning the project. It's actually the appeal.
Right. So we can't relitigate this entire process, right?
That's correct.
And I've been doing this for a while. I've never felt like we were in the position to get involved in trying to define what an environmental impact was or what public health and safety was. That those are fairly well defined terms in case law.
That's correct.
Okay. So to me, counsel, that's the issue. I feel very sorry that you're worried about what's going to happen as a result of this. But I do think I have a couple of guiding principles in making decisions. One is I believe in property rights. I believe that in America you have a right to do with your property what you want to do with your property as long as it's legal and ethical and it's within the law. I think that in this case it meets all those requirements. The other thing is I've seen this happen a few times. We had a similar case to this, a much bigger case with Home Depot. They wanted to build a Home Depot in a place which now is a subdivision. And we had decided, the Planning Commission had decided to allow the Home Depot to be built, and it came to the council to make a decision because there was an appeal process. And people got so involved in predicting what was going to happen in the future. I had a lady come up and said, if you allow the Home Depot to be built, my family is going to be murdered and my daughter is going to be raped. And I said, well, how's that going to happen? She said, well, illegal immigrants are going to be hanging around Home Depot. They're going to get bored. They're going to come over. They're going to look in my window. They're going to see my daughter. They're going to come and rape her. And then when my husband comes home, they're going to murder him. And that sounds absurd, but we have to kind of live within the reality of the facts that we have at hand. We can't extrapolate deep into the future. No, it didn't. So what I'm trying to say is, so in order to make any of this make any sense, we have to treat everybody by the same standards. So the standards are that we have to follow the law. And right now, tonight, my staff, who I trust, I've been working with for a long time, they've never steered me incorrectly, tells me that the only thing that we can decide tonight is whether or not these 5 findings, or 4 findings, are within the law. is your appeal consistent with these 5 findings? And if they are, if we can't find that any is to be true, we have to deny the appeal. And there's really nothing we can do about that. It's so, counsel, that's how I look at it. You know, we can argue that, but I think anything else other than that, you're opening yourself up to lawsuits, and we're being capricious, and we're making decisions based upon emotion, because we like to help folks, and I love to help you. I wish there was a way that we could make everybody walk away happy tonight and say that we figured out a good plan for all of us, but I don't see how that could happen.
Are you ready for discussion on this?
Yeah, well, we're having a discussion, yeah.
Well,
oh, you know what? We never closed the public hearing. I apologize. I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Please vote. Okay. Well,
Motion
just
carries
take
by
my speech and move
unanimous
it forward
vote.
then.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. I can't make any of those findings. I just can't.
Anybody else?
They're all looking at me, I guess.
Next in line.
I know. I always wait. I really do. You know, I agree with you on property rights. I think, but neighbors have property rights too. And one of the things that the city is charged with is to keep people safe. And I think that's, please don't interrupt me. Just let me so I think, I appreciate the city attorney's opinion. I have a different opinion. I don't think I need to produce evidence, concrete evidence at this point for point number 3. The word likely, to me, that's possible and probable. And I think it's possible, and I think it's probable that there would be some safety issues here. And what I mean by that is, if you open up the street, Oakdale is a very skinny street from Main to 2nd Street. And if we increase car trips down that road, which is a very skinny street with its own kids and things or whatever, I think it's likely there's going to be a serious health problem from traffic on that section of Oakdale if people take that now. I also just believe it's likely that if you make a through street, there's going to be speeders, and I think there's going to be serious health problems. And how can I not acknowledge that? Because the first time it happens, it's on me. If I say, yeah, I let it go through. And I can't say with definity that that was the cause. The opening of the thing is the cause was the speeder, not the opening of the road. But this happens to be in my district. This is I represent both the property owner and the neighbors, and so I have that to consider too. I personally find the neighbor's argument more compelling that this site map is likely to cause serious health problems in the form of safety issues. So I am going to vote to grant the appeal.
I just have to ask you, I know you care about language. Do you really equate safety and health?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
I'll tell you, I saw the most horrific accident on Greenfield yesterday, and a person died in a truck accident, and it was a drunk driver, and the passenger died, and I can absolutely say there's a link between health and safety.
That is exactly the same argument people are making, saying that firearms are a public health crisis.
It's a public health crisis if somebody drives drunk. So there is a link between health and safety.
It's worth debating.
I hear you, but you asked and I gave you an answer.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I wasn't really. I really wanted to know what you thought. So, all right.
After you see this accident yesterday, it was a debris. It was just 10 houses up from me. Debris field, 150 feet. Took out a 70-foot fence and about 20 feet of concrete block wall. Horrific accident that didn't need to happen. So there is absolutely a link between drinking, which is health, and safety. A man lost his life yesterday.
Phil?
Yeah, this isn't an easy decision. It's unfortunate that the design of it seems like we were getting close to some kind of a compromise with regard to keeping the east side of the street closed, redesigning it. That in my head is the compromise. But it doesn't seem like the applicant either can do that or will do that. I've never built a house before in my life, but I work in the construction industry, and Southern California is the most difficult place to build in the world. On the other side of it, keeping that street closed would keep the property value of those potential sites a lot higher if the road didn't go through, because they would end there. So there's a material benefit for the applicant to redesign, to keep the road closed. It would fall in line, and there is a material decline in the property owners around that property because it's not a cul-de-sac anymore. That's a benefit to their property values as well. I'm at a loss.
It would be, per the staff estimate, it would be one car every 8 minutes in addition to what goes through there now.
For the estimated amount of traffic.
On average.
On average.
Yeah.
Are you finished, Phil?
Yeah.
Michelle?
This is a really tough decision. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, as far as like property rights. And we're talking about the property rights for everybody here. Property rights of the neighbors, property rights of the builder. And we've been playing the what if game all night long. Well, what if we decide to grant the appeal? Where does it go from there? What if we decide to open up the road? What happens there? We don't know. We could do the CEQA. We could go ahead and grant them the appeal and do the test, and let's play the what if game. What if it comes back and says, yeah, they don't have a chance. There's no reason to keep it closed. So are we willing to take that chance to play the what if game on this? Because that's what we've been doing all night long. Well, what if you put that road through? What if you're going to have this many cars go through and you're going to have this come through? If you keep it closed, there's going to be, we've heard, what if fire can't get in there and can't turn around? I mean, there's been what ifs on both sides. And now we've got the third option. Well, if we decide to make a change to the general plan, what if it comes back not in their favor? So, how are we supposed to make this decision when we can't even get the neighbors to agree with each other? Because really, the builder is a neighbor, and he's going to be living there. And if we grant the appeal, he's already put in all this money, which Doesn't matter to your pocketbook, but it matters to his pocketbook and his family. And if we let the street go through, are you going to hold it against him for the rest of the time he lives there? Because you can't guarantee that. And that puts, for me as a person, now I've got to, I'm going to hear it. I'm going to see your comments on Facebook and like, you did this and you did that. So I just want you guys to be sure that whatever decision we make, that you abide by it. Because it's not easy for us. We're all homeowners here. We all have lived in this city for a really long time. And we've been charged with making these decisions for you. I don't want to make this decision. I'm sorry. I mean, I know I have to, but this is a really tough decision. And there's a lot of emotions involved in it. He just wants to build his house for his family. You just want to live in your house for your family. Everybody wants the same thing. The thing that's standing in the way is the end of the road. So I don't know. I know we need to make a decision, but
I kind of think we're at that point now.
Exactly.
Unless anybody else has something substantial to add, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to.
Just one comment,
Yeah.
Bill. We've got to follow the law, otherwise there's chaos. And I just can't come up with a finding, there's no evidence for a finding for granting the appeal. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to make a motion then to deny the appeal.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please vote.
Motion carries by a 4-1 vote with Councilmember Goel voting no.
All right, this brings us to adjournment. The adjourned regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 13th day of September 2022, is adjourned until Tuesday, September 27th, 2022 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.